Welcome everybody to GTMN. It's October 30th. We missed last week, so apologies for everybody who was expecting a banger episode last week, but we got some stuff for you today. All right, Austin, the first thing that's top of mind for you, for me, is did you hear about this thing? I must be too old for this, but here's what I read recently. There's a Twitch 30-day long stream by Cenat, who is apparently like this big influencer. I actually don't know what he does, but can you imagine live streaming your life for 30 days? And this is like a whole thing in the Twitch community. It's called a Subathon. I have no idea what that means, but you just go live for 30 days and the brands are sponsoring these folks. He had a special drop-in from LeBron. He had a special drop-in from Snoop Dogg, and he's just streaming his life. I guess that's how Twitch started, but with Justin TV or something, right? Is that right? Am I connecting the dots there correctly? But just so wild.
I feel like we've come full circle, Pranav, because now we're back to the real world, which was in the 90s and 2000s, where a camera crew would go around filming you, except now it's just your computer screen.
That's right. And I was reading this note from Kai, and he's like, yeah, it's a lot of work because you kind of have to game plan 30 days of content. You can't just wing it. So there's a significant amount of work, and then life happens and random things happen, and you make what you can out of it. But I'm just like, wow, that must be a stressful way to live life. But what's happening on the media side is now brands are trying to find those, especially the gaming and Twitch community, like they're just finding sponsorship opportunities, and it's a big thing. And then connecting the dots to a brand that both you and I have some connections to, I saw that Ramp launched a live stream. Did you see this? Of the office guy, I forget his name, and they had him in a box, Brian. And
yeah, Brian I always forget how to pronounce his last name.
We'll find it, but he was literally just doing receipts on a live stream and comparing to Ramp doing receipts. I thought it was hilarious, and it took over sort of social media for a little bit, at least in the SaaS world. Brands doing streams, 30-day subathons. I thought this whole culture and strategy is pretty interesting. I think there's going to be more of this going forward.
I mean, this is just like a classic rendition of everything we already know, which is like what's old is new again. And then what's new becomes old, and we repeat the cycle. The in-person stuff doesn't surprise me, right? Like we are now well post-COVID, and people have a voracious appetite for in-person events and connection. So it only makes sense that the idea of in-person marketing is becoming more important. The thing with Ramp though is funny because back in 2020, when I was at Runway, which is an FP&A company that Siki Chen, who was of Sandbox and Postmates, started, for one of our events that we had, we basically got our alpha out the door. This was like December, I think, of 2020. I promised a special surprise to the team with Siki, and we hired Brian. It's Baumgartner, Brian Baumgartner, and we hired him on Cameo to basically come and talk to the team. And this was like the days when Cameo was taking off because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I always thought there was like a play there because he was the most iconic accountant of the early 2000s. The people that are growing up now grew up on The Office, but what Ramp did was so much more. I mean, it was so extraordinary to like fake hire Brian as the CFO and then to create a whole day out of it. I just thought it would have been really funny if they had staged some skits with the actual CFO of Ramp, Will. I think it's Will Petrie. I thought that it would have been really funny if they had like a CFO off, but It was still great. I mean, I tuned in. I watched it for 2 hours. It's interesting. This leads me to like more of a meta point though, not to get too sidetracked, but people don't talk about like the amount of time you have to take in your day to like observe, listen, and consume. We always
Mm.
talk about consumption as a bad thing, especially when it's like on Reddit or Instagram. But there are lots of moments where consumption can be really authentic and actually enjoyable. And I actually took like an hour or two out of my day just to like have it on in the background. I put it on my iPad. I was working, but I don't know, like it was awesome. Like I wish we had more of that, and I also wish that was normalized. I feel like in this kind of post-COVID world, there's this idea that you always have to be busy. But I
Yeah.
remember when I started my career, there were actually long stretches of time where like I had work to do, but that was like the water cooler. Like you go and hang with people, you talk, you get coffee, you watch this thing. So I'd be curious if like a lot of people tuning in watched it, maybe with their colleagues in the office.
I bet they did. And I actually think that the whole concept was a really powerful concept, and I think they're going to use it, and I'm sure they're going to use it in all types of their marketing, right? They've got an asset that will live on forever. Okay, I want to switch gears and talk about another study. This was, I think, by Nielsen, and I was surprised when I saw this. Maybe not too surprised, but like they rated all of the online media, and not just online media, but like basically what they're now calling, total TV, so online TV and linear TV and everything in between. And just look at that first one, YouTube with 13%, and then you have Walt Disney, and then you have Netflix. It's like I didn't I've never seen a chart like this before, but my mind was blown away that YouTube is that far ahead, and I don't think anybody else is going to catch up. Maybe Netflix has a chance, but like this is just I mean
And
astounding to me.
and I wonder like what's the split between YouTube and YouTube TV, right?
Oh, right, they're not splitting that out here.
Yeah. I subscribe to YouTube TV, and if anybody from Comcast is listening, hopefully this is a lesson in hubris. But like I was a loyal Comcast customer for nearly a decade, but the straw that broke the camel's back was when the price went from like 207 to like 250 to 270 to 307. I'm like, what the actual heck? It's is clear price gouging, and
Yeah.
uh, and so I cut the contract and I went to YouTube TV, which is like I don't know, $50 a month, and I get to watch all the TV shows that I used to, and I can access it through Apple TV, and it's the greatest thing in the world. So this is showing media consumption, but I'm sure there's another chart of like cable consumption, and maybe YouTube TV is broken out there. But when they lump everything together, you don't know like are they watching cable or are they just watching short clips and actual videos on YouTube? I totally buy it though. I remember back in 2021, I was talking to a colleague. This was at Ramp, so maybe it was 2022, but he was like, "Yeah, I don't even have cable. I just like watch YouTube and like I subscribe to the ad-free version and I just like find things and watch them," which was
Yep.
crazy to me.
Yep. No, I've definitely done that. I've definitely gone and looked for documentaries or, things like that I'm curious about. The I'm a little bit disappointed overall in sort of the algo on YouTube. I don't mean YouTube TV. I'm also a YouTube TV subscriber. It's fantastic. But the algo itself just like keeps pushing me to extreme stuff. And I keep like
Joe
saying,
Rogan, yeah.
it's like it's either like extreme left or extreme right, like political stuff. Maybe I was into it when the election was going on, but I'm like, I'm done with it. Like, don't show me any more of that content. But it's just that's what the algo pushes, right? So
Yeah,
um
I wish I could talk to the algorithm and like ask it what it thinks of me because my perception of what it thinks of me is that I'm a blue collar, probably racist white guy because all it gives me is like Joe Rogan content and plumbing videos, you know? Like I watch one video figuring out how can I find a beam in my ceiling, and now it's like, oh, this guy must be a construction worker, so I get like drywall videos and plumbing videos.
so here's a little side project idea for you, Austin. Like we need to build a little wipe coded app. you put in some parameters and it just like goes and likes a bunch of stuff on YouTube with those parameters and it changes your algo.
Changes your algo. Yeah, there was that phase where everybody's going through is like, show me your Instagram feed. Like reveals so much about what social media thinks of you, and it's kind of terrifying.
Totally. These days on my Instagram feed, I basically have workout videos and baby
Just a
and
bunch
baby
of naked
photos.
dudes with mine.
Yeah, exactly.
I watched one video on like, how do I do a proper, crunch? And now it's like, oh, you must want lots of ripped guys talking about their hybrid workouts,
Exactly. Oh my God. Okay, here's another fun YouTube story. So they've now recently launched this likeness detection. So they're finally doing this where creators, so you could go on YouTube and say that, hey, I don't know if they will take you seriously, Austin. I don't know how big you are, but you can say
Probably
that
not.
if you find any other videos that are the likeness of me, you can take them down. So they're basically trying to go hard against all the AI stuff. So the exact opposite direction of, well, maybe it's not the opposite direction, but like just being very mindful of, protecting their biggest creators, right? So if you're Kai Cenat, you can't just have thousands of AI videos of Kai Cenat, right? Or I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But anyway, I thought that was really interesting from YouTube.
Well, I mean, we've been predicting this. There'll be the tools that come out that enable bad actors to propagate garbage AI and people's likeness, but then the same tools to combat it will, fast follow. And giving creators the tools to take down and find content that is unwanted only seems logical, and it's just an extension of the same content, the same tools that are being used to create content.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. And Austin, we're going to talk about a little bit of what's happening on the sales side. So we haven't really talked about sales tech, but a bunch of things launched in the last couple of weeks that I thought were interesting. So I'll read this out to you. One is Apollo. So Apollo.io, they got banned on LinkedIn. That's what I know them about or for. They launched an entire sort of AI suite of like assistant that does the whole end-to-end go-to-market for you. Then I saw that Gong launched their sort of whole AI capability. I don't know what they ended up calling it, but they had a big sort of announcement a couple of days ago. So Gong's doing it, Apollo's doing it, and then you have this company NA10, which is also pretty hot. They raised like $180 million to continue to do like AI-based orchestration. And I think most of the stuff that NA10 does is in the sales and marketing land. So it feels like everybody has their AI and agent story out. And then I saw, okay, just like this morning while researching for this podcast, I saw Hightouch just launched agents. So I forget the founder's name, but he was on LinkedIn talking about sort of how you can now, create your agents on Hightouch. So everybody has agents. It's going to get commoditized, which is fascinating to me, but I'm curious like what your take is, like what's happening here, and do you see any sort of trends, or if you're a buyer, if you're a sales or marketing leader, what do you do with all of these agents? What do you pick?
Well, I mean, first of all, just maybe a personal opinion. Agent is a marketing term. Like anybody with technical chops knows that the idea of an agent is really just like a computer script that's running in a continuous fashion using some LLM, one of these LLMs in the background. For example, like I know people who create an agent, quote unquote, by running a script. Okay, so we're calling a script an agent all of a sudden. But I think that
cron jobs, Austin.
Yeah. Really, an agent is just like the ability to run a query continuously using AI, which means that the outcome may be different, as opposed to a regular script which produces the same static outcome every single time. An agent may produce different outcomes or varied outcomes. So I'm just not like, I'm not totally convinced that we should be calling everything agents. I think that's just like a marketing term, and like people have to sleuth through that and make decisions for themselves. There are some times where an agent makes sense, especially when it's responding on your behalf or taking action on your behalf. If it's not doing that and it's just performing administrative work, like is it an agent or is it a workflow? These things are the same. Like an agent is a workflow, is an LLM, it's a process. It's some type of automation that's running in the background. And I think when you start to look at it that way, really the only difference is that automation has gone through like several phase shifts. First, automations were wrote and bespoke and coded. Then we went through this era of workflows and automations having a UI and still being fairly technical, but think of like Zapier. And now we're getting to the next level of that where you have increasingly complex UIs where one of the nodes can be send a prompt to an AI agent, which then performs a task. The next version of this, though, will be, and a lot of people are predicting this, is like the end of the workflow UI, which is to say, at some point, do you really need to line up the nodes with information flowing between them? Or do you outline the step process and the tools you want to go through and the data you want to send between them? And you give docs and an MPC server, MCP server to one of these models and allow it to create the workflow for you. And there's a lot of bulls who think like, oh, that's going to happen tomorrow. There's a lot of bears, who, obviously from N8N and Zapier, who don't. And I think we're living in this hybrid world for probably the next like 2 years at least, where it's going to be yes and. You're going to have some instances where the machine is working behind the scenes for you. I'd clarify example, not to sponsor any particular CRMs, but like we abstracted away some of that behind the scenes. So after a call, you don't have to rent an agent. Clarify was always on. And again, is it an agent? We could call it an agent. Is it a workflow? We could call it a workflow. Or is it just part of the system? These things are all the same. Just depends on the tool you're talking about. The last thing I would say too is that I think a lot of these tools are going to be commoditized. Maybe not N8N and Zapier because they have so much functional use and they help fill in the gaps between tools. But increasingly, I'm seeing third-party tools come out where they're just thin wrappers around an LLM. This is especially the case in like the content space where like you have an AI tool to like grep what people are searching. You have an AI tool to help you write. You have an AI tool to help you publish blogs, an AI tool to help you write emails. Like these are all just like custom prompts on top of an LLM. And I think for small startups, you can absolutely just build an MVP really quickly. But even for big enterprises, like I'm doing some work with Capital One right now, and every tool that comes up, it's this question of like, yeah, do we really need to buy this, or can we just put an engineer on it for a couple weeks?
Yeah.
And yes, there's maintenance and all this other stuff, but so many of these things are actually much more simple than you realize, and also you don't want to lock yourself into like 100, 200, 3,000 contract with a tool that might be commoditized tomorrow.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think what's really happening here is, Apollo, N8N, Gong, or anybody who's adding Hightouch, anybody who's adding agents, the real sort of value of these, in very simple terms, is natural language querying. So we have, a bookkeeper tech that we use, and they added an AI feature. So now I can just go in and like for my investor update, say like, what's our zero cash date? And it just gives me the answer. And I don't have to go open up the books and look at a report, none of that, right? It's right there. And I think that's what's happening is like just making the data a lot more accessible. These are all going to be retention and ease of use capabilities rather than, I'm going to be able to win a ton more contracts because I have an agent in my, sales and marketing tool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that this is the thing that's going to make you win the whole category. But that's my take. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you're so right. Like if some of the value is just a chat UI experience on top of your data, that's going to be commoditized by every tool. So then the value is in the underlying platform or some other thing than the fact that you have, effectively a prompt to talk to your data.
Yep, exactly. Okay, we talked about RAMP already, so I am going to switch gears to talk about Pomelli. Have you heard about Pomelli? Has this crossed your feed yet?
What is this?
You're going to love this. This is a new Google Labs project, so maybe it'll go away in the next 2 days, who knows. But Google Labs launched Pomelli, so you can go and sign up for this right now. And what they're essentially doing is they're allowing small businesses to create on-brand content specifically for social. So this is Google doing this, which is interesting, right? So this is not for search ads. This is literally for social. And you can go in, put in your website. It does what they call a brand DNA, and then it just like starts generating content for you, whether it's organic content or paid content. So I don't know if this is going to become a big thing, but yesterday when I tried to sign up for it, it was like, hey, we're getting way too much traffic. This is Google. So come back and try later. So I think it has a lot of demand, and it does signal something for like, some interesting stuff is gonna happen between Meta, social, LinkedIn, Google, all launching these types of tools.
This is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just did it for you, and it's waiting 5 minutes to see. So we'll have an answer once it comes back.
Okay, so this happened, and then something else hit my feed. This hit my feed. Has this hit your feed yet? Okay, so for people who are listening in, we're looking at an ad by True Classic, and I follow the True Classic CEO and CMO on LinkedIn and on X, and they basically said that Meta just decided to launch this ad. It must have been part of their, Advantage Plus sort of campaign, where you're seeing an old grandma in a fleece sweater where the zipper stops at the chest, but then starts again at the middle part and continues downwards. Like, it's an absurd, obviously this is a completely AI generated ad, and we saw this one in the last episode, right, with Blue Apron, but like this got so much attention. But I think what's happening is people think that somehow, like, if Meta can't get this right, and then you have, Google launching this thing, and then you have like a ton of these new AI startups that are launching, creative and ad gen and agencies and what have you. I'm just like, the tech is not ready yet. But then the other part of my brain goes, but yeah, Pranav, this is probably the worst it's ever going to be. And in the next like 1 or 2 years, they're going to figure this out. And so I'm curious what you think about this. Like, which one do you trend toward?
I mean, I think that, yeah, I mean, my instinct is to believe that like we're following the cycle of what's old is new again. When I talk to people about being creative in advertising campaigns, I feel like I'm spouting the advice that was long gone from 10 years ago, which is like, slow down, be authentic, be original. Like, your people's creativity is actually going to be the most important DNA in winning campaigns. And we just talked about this at the beginning. Why was the Ramp campaign so great? It was real. It was a real human. It was a real arcade. There were real people in New York City. And so I think even if the technology gets better, there's this question of, well, now that we know that anything can be created in the digital world, does that actually mean the space for winning is in the physical world? And if I were a CMO and I was betting on the future right now, I would be betting on physical spaces and honestly going back to like the basics of marketing, which is like, how do we physically reach people? How do we call them? How do we talk to them? How do we show up in their door? How do we get them to places? Local community dinners, conferences, like all those things will never be overtaken by AI. The only things that are going to be overtaken by AI are ads and content. And and frankly, this gets back to like both the bane and one of the coolest parts of Silicon Valley, which is the idea of like, hey, you can use marketing at scale to grow your business quickly. Well, what's happening is that that's going to be effectively commoditized. There'll be pockets of people who still find success, and I'm sure it will still work because, as plenty of evidence has shown, our attention span is getting shorter and we're getting dumber. So like, these tools will still be effective, but only up to some level and only for specific people and certain audiences.
I completely agree. I think my takeaway from this, and I'm sure there are other sort of talented marketers who agree, this stuff is not going to go away, right? The AI slop or AI generated ads are going to become mainstream. They're going to get better every week, every month, every quarter, and they are going to become sort of a standard tool set for every marketer. But it is all going to be very median. And what I mean by that is you're not going to get outsized rewards out of these types of ad campaigns. And so you're still going to have to take some big risks, whether it's done through AI or whether it's done through real human beings. And that stuff is not going to be just you prompting an ad tool to come up with some new concept. It's going to come from like some crazy idea that you had. Here's a crazy idea for you, Austin. Go
Oh,
ahead. Finish your thought.
real quick. That's something, this is like, you hit on a really important meta point, right? Like, let's just take TV ads, for example. Today, TV ads are really expensive. So the only people who can run TV ads are people who can afford them. And there's a cost constraint on, hey, I have to pay for this ad, but I also have to produce it. And there's this assumption amongst a lot of executives that, like, oh, if I can use AI, I can cut the cost of building the ad. But guess what? If you cut the cost of building the ad, now all these new entrants are going to be able to enter the market. So, like,
100%.
you're not really getting the efficiency gains you're thinking. And then we get back to the fact that, like, okay, well, now if you want your ad to stand out amongst a sea of other ads, you either have to pay more for placement or you have to pay more for being creative. So, like, all this technology is driving us in one direction, which inevitably will drive us back in the other direction as adoption and commoditization occurs.
Bingo. Right? The whole idea of arbitrage is kind of dead. I don't think that there's arbitrage anymore because of the massive equalization of the playing field, right? So now the arbitrage is really in the creative. And how do you find amazing creative? Like, to me, it's just like I was obviously not there in the Mad Men era, but I think it comes back to, like, just how crazy, bold, amazing, insightful you are as a marketer, and how do you bring those ideas to life. Okay, here's another one. So WPP, which is one of the largest agencies, I think they might be the largest agency in the world. I might be wrong. They've struck a 5-year, $400 million partnership to integrate Google's AI tools. So I don't know if Pomelli would be part of that, but like Gemini, VO3 into WPP's marketing platform. And then they launched their own platform for SMBs. I think it's called WPP Open or something. So essentially what the bet that they're making is, hey, our agency model is going to struggle. And so we're going all in on, tech and AI and working with Google to, maybe add some finesse from WPP's proprietary, I don't know what, and getting this out to, all of the SMB community. So, I mean, the next like 2 or 3 years, everything's going to be just turned upside down in like in the agency world. It's kind of nuts. Yeah, it's hard to predict.
Are so screwed.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, they're like, we saw this with McKinsey, and we're seeing it now with Accenture. So many of these knowledge-based businesses are under immense pressure, right? Think about McKinsey. What was the job of McKinsey? Well, the job was to say, hey, we can help you solve that problem by hiring really smart people who will put a deck together that will tell you what to do. Now, some of the value is like, hey, if I hire an outside third party, I have somebody to throw under the bus if these things go wrong. And that will continue to exist. People look for outside counsel because they don't believe they can get the right opinion and the right set of minds internally. Now, on one hand, agencies can become a lot more cost efficient, but that analyst work that they were billing probably the most number of hours for at the highest cost, that's going to be a really hard sell, right? If you're McKinsey and you sold a project with 7 people, 5 of which are analysts, if I was, a CEO or CFO and I was looking at that project, I'd say, like, why you have 7 analysts when I can probably get decent sized answers from GPT? So what has to happen is either your really skilled workers, your management and higher levels workers, they are doing now the work that analysts would have done with the help of LLMs. Or now even you have partners and kind of senior directors and folks higher up in the organization with a lot of experience saying, hey, we don't need analysts anymore. So like you're getting more bang for your buck. And the only way agencies can offset the cost is by charging higher dollar values for a project-based scope or for the people they have. But in general, like, just such a tough time to be in the agency world.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's really, really hard. It's funny you mentioned McKinsey because there's a McKinsey report that came out in the last like couple of weeks. And this is a McKinsey report about Martech, so a little bit different from the topic that we were talking about. And their report said that global businesses are forecast to spend $160 billion on Martech this year, and roughly about $215 billion by 2027. This is based on like a whole bunch of research that they did. And it's no surprise, like I've seen charts like this from Scott Brinker, for many, many years. But this was getting cited out there. Like $215 billion in Martech, that's a massive market, right? And then you look at the number of applications. Now, here's a funny, interesting thing that the report also said. 0 out of the 233 senior leaders interviewed by McKinsey could explain how they measure Martech return. 0.
Yeah.
That's just wild. Okay, 47% cite stack complexity and poor integration as value blockers. Stacks are bloated and siloed. So everyone agrees that, hey, this shit isn't working, but we keep putting more money into it. It's wild. It's wild. And it's also wild that, Austin, both you and I are, grew up in Martech world, but it's just funny for me to read this report. So anyway, I thought, there has to be some come to Jesus moment for this chart. Like, it can't keep growing, can it?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things. First, I've always commented this because I love Scott Brinker's post, but like, I often thinks he comes at it from the angle of being more revenue focused. He was the VP of ecosystem at HubSpot. So I think everything that connected to HubSpot was a MarTech tool. I don't necessarily know if that's true. And in fact, like, I think if we're being critical here, I could probably count on one hand and 2 feet, like, the number of tools I actually see being heavily utilized in a fully functioning enterprise MarTech stack. So if we're being generous, let's just say, like, across every category, if there's like 3 to 4 variants, I think really there's 20 to maybe 100 truly MarTech tools, right? And, and maybe you can include variants and small guys or whatever, but at some point it stops being MarTech and it starts becoming something else, like analytics or product management or some other tools. I think this categorization is overdone. The second thing is, I'm not surprised. There are more tools. There are certainly more tools than when I started this in 2017. And increasingly, the tools are getting complex across the entire stack. So previously, it was like MarTech was mostly for, in the B2C case, a CDP and its surrounding tools. And in the B2B case, it'd be like a CRM and its surrounding tools. But there's lots of complexity now. Like, in a RevTech stack, there are many tools that you would build yourself that now you can buy. And so I think that's true. The comment about all 200 or so partners not knowing the value of MarTech, this is, I think, like a classic dilemma for most MarTech tools. I mean, I experienced this when we were in a particle where you're a cost center and your goal is to try to convince the business that you're a revenue generator. And we struggle to do this because how does moving your data and creating audiences generate new revenue? It doesn't. It helps you save money by requiring fewer engineers, and it helps increase efficiency, and it might make your life easier, but none of those things can actually communicate how you're making more money. By comparison, Braze, which is now a public company and is in the messaging space, has a real line of attack to, hey, if you send 1 million messages and you generate $20,000, that's exactly how we're making you money. And this is, like, I think more of a fundamental law of business, which is like you want to, as much as possible, be aligned to helping businesses make money and save money, not
Right.
just save money. Now, again, Ramp might refute that because their whole line is save time and money. But the reality is, like, they're an essential business, right? Like, every business has a credit card. You have to have a credit card. And the credit card might not be helping you make money. So the next best thing is helping you save money. But with some of these other functional tools for marketing and go-to-market, there is an expectation that the best tools actually help you make money. And it's funny, I literally just came from a conversation with Rover before this, who's implementing a reverse ETL. And that was one of the pieces of advice I gave them was, if you want this thing to be successful, focus first and foremost on the use cases that are going to help you drive more value to the business. And by value, I mean money. So, like, whether it's deploying new data to run a new marketing campaign or deploying data to create a new ad channel, like, focus on the use cases that make money first, then focus on the use cases that help you save money, because nobody's really going to, this is my opinion, people are not going to care as much as you help them save $1 million versus if you help them make $1 million.
I think you're spot on. Like I had this conversation with people in our sales cycle at Paramark, right? We tell them like, if we don't make you money, you should just not work with us. Because what's the point of implementing something like Paramark if we're not making you money? So I completely agree with this, especially for the types of companies that we work with, right? Which are like high growth, like we're not going after the Coca-Colas where you're already spending tens of billions of dollars and maybe you are looking for efficiencies, right? But for the brands that we work with, it's a different game.
I will say though, like there's an exception to this rule, and we promise to be somewhat unbiased on this program, but I'll go ahead and mention a name. So there's this tool called Waste Not, which one of my buddies from Branch started. It's so simple. All the tool does is it plugs into your ad network and sends the audience of your existing customers to the ad network to suppress them. So it's like it literally does nothing other than, hey, don't advertise to your customers that are already paying you because that's wasted CAC. Like literally just don't waste money is the whole premise of the business.
I love it.
And I mention it because that is an example where it flies in the face of everything I said. But the reason I think it works is because it's so simple. It's not a complex tool. It takes 2 seconds to set up. And like it only does one thing. And so I think there's also this fundamental nature of like if you have a complex tool that's hard to set up and takes a lot of time, then yeah, you should probably be in the business of helping the business make money because there's a case to be made around why am I doing this if it just helps me save money. But if you just go into a platform and you click a couple of buttons and you don't really have to think about it and it's saving you a huge amount of money, especially as a large business, and you're talking about ad spend where the magnitude of change is so much larger, then it means a lot, right? For a medium-sized business, saving $250,000 might not matter. You know, a company that has a $500 million ad budget and they can save like 5% of that, it's huge.
it's a lot of money.
So
good point. Good point. I like
a little bit of an exception to the rule.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about it in certain sort of use cases, and you know, it also kind of depends on the ambition and the size of the Martech tool that we're talking about, right? So it all kind of like I could be wrong, but I'd be surprised if Waste Not is like $1 billion company, right? Like you'd have to have other use cases to add on to it and what have you. Okay, I want to end on this very positive note. I came across this article from GM and the marketing leader at GM, and this was a really interesting one. So it was the GM marketing leader makes a case for taking brand strategy control back from agencies. And here's a really interesting, I think it was in the Drum or Ad Week. I can't remember. Maybe we'll add it to the notes. The week before I joined, this is the CMO, I heard on the earnings call that we'd be cutting the marketing budget by almost $1 billion. That was can you imagine like joining a public company, auto company, and then being told even before you've started that, hey, we're taking away $1 billion of your budget. And the thing that they've done is they have moved all of the buyers of marketing to makers of marketing. So strategy, social, analytics, brand management were all brought in-house, closer to, you'll love this, closer to the engineers and the designers who are shaping the vehicles themselves. And they said, we're going to do that, and then agencies are going to be reoriented to focus purely on creativity, the craft that they love, and no longer be buried in operations or bureaucracy. I thought that is absolutely the winning formula for agencies. And it kind of harks back to that point we were making about the Mad Men era, right? Is if you as the in-house team understand the strategy, the analytics, the brand management, the social listening, and you're coming up with like the right briefs, and you're handing them off to an agency who has amazing creative talent, because it's very, very hard to hire great creative talent in-house in these companies. That's a winning combination. So there's something interesting there. I'm curious what your take is.
I think the problem is bimodal. I think for really small companies, they actually want the opposite. Not to put you on the hot seat here, Pranav, but don't you have an agency for go-to-market?
Good point. I do have an agency, and it's a very symbiotic relationship. And
they're doing rev tech work for you, and that's the point I'm making. Is like actually in smaller companies, there actually maybe is a lot of creativity amongst the founding team and the
Totally
first
fair.
marketer,
Yes.
but they actually need help automating. They need help executing. And so it's bimodal because a small organization actually needs the help executing. But as the organization gets bigger and all that work has been brought internally and things become more complex where it makes more sense to own it internally, then it makes perfect sense that an agency focuses on creative work. And so this can be solved a number of ways. You can just have different agencies of different styles, like some agencies focusing on top of market versus bottom market. But it presents a unique challenge for an agency that's trying to span the whole market, that's trying to do SMB, mid-market, and enterprise, because you need dramatically different skill sets. And I agree with you that the agencies that are best prepared for enterprise probably should be in the game of being creative, not in executing. And I think about some of the enterprises I've talked to, companies over 1,000 people, they are thinking about this internally of like, what is the next generation of marketer,
Yeah.
right? And I actually think the next generation of marketer is probably a hybrid between these things. They have to have the ability to understand how to make a prompt, how to go into a tool and run a campaign. But actually, the thing that's going to help them keep their job and probably get promoted is their creativity, their ability to come up with ideas that become campaigns. And this is kind of a unique situation because I think previously in the last 7 years I've been marketing, those roles have been very discrete and separate. And I have felt the tension even in the last couple of years of having to do both roles. And I think the marketers of the future are going to have to do both roles. And I think for an agent, a company like 3M who's saying, hey, well, let's just like own all the technical stuff and all the execution stuff, and then we'll add on additional with creative stuff. Cool, that makes perfect sense. But if I were talking to the marketers in that company, I'd say that's like your unlock for your future at this company, right? Is if they have to hire agencies to be creative, that's a way that you could probably stand out, not by being an analytics wizard.
Totally fair. There's always multiple sides to the story, right? But I was just excited to hear something quite different from that story. All right. We did promise on the last episode we're going to talk a little bit about Andromeda. So here is a little bit of what's happening with Meta and Andromeda. So Meta buyers might have heard about this term. This was like, I don't know what to call it. It's basically just like an algorithm change that happened a year ago. So it's not news, but it kind of just took over this month because I think Meta was like very broken from an ads buying perspective. And so everyone's like, is this Andromeda? Is this what's happening? And so let's clear up sort of what's happening with Andromeda. So there were 4 big updates that Meta rolled out over the last like 12 months. One of them is Andromeda. And this is essentially a much more complex model for ad ranking. And so all it's saying is that it allows Meta to pick the right creative out of millions to deliver more personalized ads to the user scrolling reels this very second. So in summary, it doesn't just know that you like shoes, but it maybe knows that you like, red flip-flops because you happen to dwell upon an image that had red flip-flops, right? I'm just making this shit up. Like, it's just trying to make those connective it's connecting the dots. But then there were a couple of other things that were really interesting. And one of them was this idea of sequence learning. So you've always probably gotten retargeted, right, Austin? Like
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. It happens to us all the time, right? You go buy a stay at a ski resort and then you get ads for other ski resorts or other hotels. What Meta has launched is when you bought a stay at a ski resort, what you would get next is ads for ski equipment, lift tickets, luggage, things of that nature. So it's trying to build an actual sequence rather than just retarget you with the same thing. Makes complete sense. Okay, so that was the second one. The third and fourth, one is called GEM, Generative Ads Recommendation Model. That's probably the one that completely borked on the True Classic ad. But it's basically trying to say that it remembers all of the characters, every single detail, and every single thing that you're consuming on the platform, and then building, recommendations for you, which is kind of wild. And then there's something called Meta Lattice. Now it all starts to kind of blend together for me. I'm like, how is any of this different? But Yeah, so basically the through line through all of this is Meta's made a lot of changes in their algorithm. And not a week or month passes by where I hear from marketers going, hey, Meta's like completely borked or Meta's doing awesome. It's wild, wild west. And it's the guidance that I have to people is don't believe any sort of ad hoc reporting on this. The only way you're going to get through this is if you continue testing. And I know it's a little bit self-serving given what we do, but that's just the way it's going to be for the next like 5 years because everything is changing so fundamentally. And some of these, Meta doesn't know what it's doing, I'll be honest, right? In terms of like, they can't say predictably, this is the thing that's going to be different for your business. They're just launching things, they're testing, they're moving fast, they're breaking things. That's just the nature of what ad tech and martech is going to be like for the next few years. All right, that was a lot. Any reactions to any of this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm sure somebody out there needs to hear this because I've had to repeat this enough times. You cannot trust Meta to self-regulate their own results because they have a conflict of interest. So if you're one of those people out there who I have met before, who has a great relationship with your Facebook or now Meta rep and thinks that they have your best interest in mind, I'm sure they do, and I'm sure they're lovely people. But you should not really take anything they say without a grain of salt. Because I've been down this road so many times before where you're working with a customer who has worked with Meta for a long time and they trust their rep to like give them inaccurate results and they take those as like the gold standard for what results should be. And it's like, you have no idea. They have no idea. There's no way, there's no version of truth in this situation. All you can do is constantly be testing, gathering your own data, and be trying to triangulate on truth within some degree of error. And that's like a really hard thing for I think a lot of marketers to accept is like there is no such thing as like 100% accuracy. Like there is no such thing as deterministic numbers. We're living largely in the realm of probabilistic numbers at this point. So figuring out what is truth versus not, figuring out what is accurately representative of where you're going versus not, is all just an exercise in like patience and tolerance for error. And I think the sooner marketing executives accept that, communicate that to their executives, the better off we'll all be because we spend a lot of time and money in pursuit of like the factually correct truth of attribution and test results. When actually it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah,
what matters is directionally what is happening. And there's a amazing professor at Wharton who I got to know when I was there. His name's Dr. Pete Fader. And one of the lessons that he taught me that really changed the way I think about marketing is this idea that like every marketing analysis starts with a story, right? Because data on its own can be wrong. Meta could be wrong. You don't know what they're actually doing because you don't have access to their models. But beyond that, there might be information that you don't have that makes the analysis incomplete. And that's the more important thing is like you may be drawing conclusions about cause, but like this really important factor was not in the model and you don't even know about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great point to end on. And again, this isn't about sort of peddling any one thing. This is like just open your eyes and mind to the fact that you just laid out is a probabilistic world and understand that you live in this probabilistic world and act accordingly. Amazing. Austin, this was a fantastic episode. We're going to tune in again next week for episode 4. There's some more stuff that we're working on, but Austin and I have been behind on getting those live. A new website. We have to pick the domain name and buy it, but it's coming soon. And some weekly updates. Always just stay up to date on what's happening in the world of go-to-market. So until then, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Pranav. See you guys.
All right. See y'all.